The neon sign flickered above the diner like a dying heartbeat, casting erratic shadows across the cracked asphalt parking lot. It was just past midnight in the dusty outskirts of a forgotten town, where the air hung heavy with the scent of stale coffee and engine grease. Inside, the last patrons nursed their mugs, oblivious to the storm brewing at the counter. Sarah Jenkins, her apron stained from a 12-hour shift, wiped down the formica surface with hands that trembled not from fatigue, but from the weight of unspoken years. At 38, she carried the lines of a life etched by loss, her brother's faded dog tags tucked in her pocket, a reminder of promises made under desert skies. This was her final night here. Her last turn slinging hash to truckers and drifters before packing up and vanishing into the anonymity of the highway. But fate, as it often did in these borderland tales, had other plans. The bell above the door jingled harshly, shattering the low hum of conversation. In stormed Carl, the diner's owner, his face twisted in the red flush of cheap whiskey and unchecked rage. He was a bull of a man, his belly straining against a grease-smeared shirt, eyes narrowed like faulty headlights. "Jenkins!" he bellowed, slamming a fist on the counter that sent salt shakers rattling. "You're done. Pack your crap and get out. I ain't paying for your sob stories no more." The few late-night souls, a weary trucker in the corner booth, an old woman nursing pie, glanced up, and then away, as if humiliation was just another item on the menu. Sarah froze, her cloth mid-swipe, the heat rising in her cheeks. It wasn't just the firing, it was the venom in his voice, the way he spat her name like it was dirt. Whispers from the kitchen staff echoed his cruelty. She'd missed shifts caring for her ailing mother, confided too much about her brother's old biker crew, the iron vow that had scattered after his death in some long-forgotten skirmish. To Carl, she was weak, a liability in his cutthroat world of tips and turnover. He leaned in closer, his breath sour and invasive, jabbing a thick finger at her chest. "You think you're special? Crying about some dead soldier brother and his motorcycle gang fairy tales? This ain't no charity. You're fired, and if you don't clear out now, I'll make sure no diner from here to the state line takes you." The trucker shifted uncomfortably, but no one moved. Sarah's vision blurred, not from tears she refused to shed, but from the raw sting of exposure. Her brother's promise echoed in her mind, the iron vow, sworn among leather-clad brothers under a blood moon. Protect the fallen's kin, no matter the miles or years, but that crew had fractured after his passing, bonds frayed by time and regret. She was alone now, just a waitress with calloused hands and a heart scarred by silence. Carl grabbed her arm, yanking her toward the back door, his grip bruising like the lies he'd spread about her unreliability. The old woman gasped, but the room held its breath, complicit in the unraveling. Outside, the desert wind whipped up grains of sand that bit like accusations. Carl shoved her against the diner wall, the metal siding cool against her back. "Last warning, Jenkins. Walk away, or I'll drag you myself." Her keys slipped from her pocket, clattering to the gravel, a small betrayal in the night. That's when the rumble started. Low at first, like thunder rolling in from the horizon, building to a symphony of raw power. Headlights pierced the darkness, dozens of them, slicing through the veil of stars like judgment incarnate. Engines roared in unison, a convoy of chrome and leather materializing from the black ribbon of highway. 50 strong they were. Harleys and Indians, beasts of the road with exhausts growling like awakened guardians. The lead bike pulled up first, its rider dismounting with the grace of a shadow, his kuta emblazoned with faded patches. Iron Vow MC, the emblem of crossed pistons and a vow etched in iron. The man was weathered, mid-40s with a salt and pepper beard framing eyes that held the depth of old wars. He called himself Jax Harlan. Though names mattered little in the Brotherhood, It was the patch on his back that spoke volumes. Behind him, the pack fanned out, a wall of vests and determination, engines idling like patient sentinels. Carl stumbled back, his bravado crumbling as the bikers encircled the diner lot, their presence a force that bent the very air. Jax stepped forward, his boots crunching gravel, and fixed his gaze on Sarah. Recognition dawned in his eyes, softening the lines of his face. "Sarah," he said, voice gravelly but warm, like embers in the chill. "Daughter of the road, sister to Ethan Jenkins. We've come to honor the vow." She blinked, the world tilting. Ethan, her brother, lost to a roadside ambush years ago, his last letter speaking of the Iron Vow's unbreakable code. Ride for the fallen, shield their blood. These men, scattered by grief and life, had tracked her down through whispers in truck stops and coded messages on rider forums. Jax knelt, retrieving her keys, and placed them in her palm. "Your brother's promise lives in us. No one's laying hands on Iron Kin tonight." The bikers nodded as one, their voices rising in a low chant. "Road Sister! Road Sister!" Carl backed away, paling, as the convoy's sheer number turned the lot into a fortress of loyalty. One rider, a burly woman named Lena with tattoos snaking up her arms, handed Sarah a spare helmet. "Mount up, sister. We're riding you out of here. The vow demands it." The intervention was swift, poetic justice unfolding under the flickering neon. Carl muttered curses, but retreated inside, the door slamming like a defeated echo. Sarah's heart pounded, the humiliation evaporating in the heat of exhaust and brotherhood. These weren't strangers. They were the family she'd thought lost, reassembled by a call in the dead of night, a tip from an old contact about her final shift, her struggles. Jax clapped her shoulder gently. "Ethan saved my hide in the sands. This repays a fraction, but there's more riding on this than one bad night. The vow's under threat, corruption creeping in from city suits, trying to bury our code. We need you, Sarah. Your brother's blood runs true. It'll guide us." As the engines revved to life, the convoy formed a protective phalanx around her beat-up sedan, headlights blazing a path into the dawn. The desert stretched endless, promising redemption not in vengeance, but in the quiet power of kept oaths. Sarah slid into her car, the helmet in her lap, a talisman of chosen kin. For the first time in years, the road ahead gleamed with purpose, a sister's honor, a vow reborn. But shadows lingered, whispers of a larger storm, where loyalty would be tested against the cold machinery of institutional betrayal. The ride had just begun, engines singing of battles yet to come. The convoy thundered down the empty highway, a serpent of chrome and thunder cutting through the pre-dawn haze. Sarah gripped the wheel of her old sedan, the engines straining to keep pace with the flanking Harleys that boxed her in like living shields. The vibration hummed through the seats, syncing with her pulse, while the scent of hot rubber and distant rain mingled in the air vents. Jax rode shotgun in spirit, his bike just ahead, leading the pack with a steady hand on the throttle. Behind her, Lena's machine growled close, a reassuring shadow. 50 riders strong. They moved as one organism, their formation a testament to years of unspoken drills. Protect the center, watch the flanks, never break the line. The diner's humiliation faded like exhaust in the rear view, replaced by a tentative warmth blooming in Sarah's chest, but beneath it questions churned. Why now, after all these years? And what shadows had pulled this fractured family back together? As the first light of dawn bled across the horizon, painting the scrubland in hues of rust and gold, Jax signaled a pull-off at a weathered roadside rest stop. The pack decelerated in unison, engines purring down to idles that echoed off the chain-link fences. Dust settled like a sigh as boots hit gravel, and the bikers dismounted, forming a loose circle around Sarah's car. She stepped out, legs unsteady from the adrenaline crash, the helmet still clutched in her hands like an anchor. The air was crisp now, carrying the faint tang of sagebrush and cooling metal. Jax approached, his scooter creaking softly, and offered a nod that spoke volumes, welcome but wary. "We ain't stopping long," he said, voice low against the fading rumble. "But you need to know the road we're on, Sarah. Ethan's vow wasn't just words. It's a chain linking us all." Around the circle, faces turned toward her, hardened by sun and sorrow, yet lit with a quiet fire. There was Marcus, a lanky veteran with a scar tracing his jaw like a forgotten riverbed, who'd ridden with Ethan in the early days. Beside him, Riley, a sharp-eyed mechanic whose hands bore the calluses of endless repairs, and a few others whose patches gleamed with the Iron Vow's emblem. Crossed roads, eternal bond. Lena leaned against her bike, arms crossed, her presence a steady force amid the men. "Your brother's letter reached us last year," Jax continued, pulling a crumpled envelope from his vest. It was faded, edges worn from journeys, but the script was unmistakable. Ethan's bold hand, written from some dusty outpost. "He named you guardian of the code if he fell. Said the vow would protect you like kin. We scattered after the loss. Jobs, regrets, the pull of normal life. But whispers started coming, corruption eating at the edges." Sarah took the letter, her fingers tracing the ink as memories flooded back. Ethan, laughing over late-night calls, promising he'd return with stories of the open road, the ambush that claimed him, details blurred by official silence, just roadside incident in the reports, had shattered her world. She'd buried the pain in diner shifts, raising her mother through illness alone, never dreaming the Brotherhood endured. "What kind of corruption?" she asked, voice steady despite the knot in her throat. Jax's eyes darkened, scanning the horizon as if threats lurked in the mirages. "City suits, Sarah. Developers and badges on the take. They're pushing to claim our old clubhouse land, prime spot for some resort scam. But it's more. They've been leaning on riders, planting doubts, turning brothers against each other with bribes and threats. One of ours, Tommy, got roughed up last month. Signs of aggression left him sidelined, whispering about folding the club." The circle murmured, a low wave of dissent. Marcus spat into the dust. "Tommy's no traitor. He rode with Ethan in the thick of it. This is a test. See if the vow bends." Lena stepped forward, her voice cutting through like a blade. "And you, Sarah, Ethan's blood. If we stand, we need your word. Ride with us, not just tonight, but to the heart. Help us reclaim what's ours before the suits bury it all." The weight settled on her like the dawn's growing light. Not just escape from Carl's cruelty, but a call to honor a promise she'd all but forgotten. Sarah's mind raced, her mother's fragile health back home, the uncertainty of leaving everything behind. Yet the pull was magnetic, the sense of chosen family wrapping around her like the warmth of the rising sun on leather. Jax unfolded a worn map on his bike's tank, tracing routes with a scarred finger. "We head to the old safe house first. Neutral ground, 2 hours north. There, the council meets, but eyes are on us. Keep formation tight." As the bikers remounted, engines coughing to life, Sarah felt the shift. No longer the humiliated waitress, she was road sister now, the title echoing in their chants from the diner lot. She slid back into her sedan, the letter tucked safely beside her, and pulled into line. The convoy surged forward, asphalt blurring beneath tires, the desert awakening with the cry of hawks overhead. But as miles unspooled, doubt crept in like morning fog. Flashing in her mirrors, a distant set of lights, too steady, too purposeful, hinted at pursuit. Were the suits already closing in? Or was it her own fears, shadows of isolation refusing to fade? The safe house loomed by mid-morning, a squat adobe building half swallowed by mesquite, its tin roof scarred from years of storms. The pack encircled it, scouts peeling off to check perimeters while Jax ushered Sarah inside. The air within was cool and musty, laced with the ghost of pipe smoke and old coffee. A long table dominated the room, scarred by knives and tails, surrounded by mismatched chairs. Waiting there was the council, 5 elders of the vow, faces etched with the mileage of loyalty. At the head sat Elias, a silver-haired giant whose voice boomed like thunder. "Sarah Jenkins," he rumbled, rising to clasp her hand. "Ethan's shadow walks with you. We've honored the vow by coming, but the storm's brewing. Tell us your truth. What chains you to this fight?" She hesitated, the room's eyes upon her, then spoke of the diner, the years of silence, the ache of loss. Words flowed like released rain, binding her to them. Elias nodded, his gaze piercing. "The suits ain't just after land, they're after our soul, fabricating stories, saying we're relics, dangerous. Tommy's incident, a warning. We ride to confront him at the town hall meeting tomorrow. Peaceful but firm. Show the world the vow stands for justice, not chaos." As plans unfolded, routes, signals, contingencies, Sarah felt the moral weight settle. This wasn't vengeance, it was redemption, a stand against the corrosion of power. Yet in the corner, a young rider named Dylan fidgeted, his eyes darting. Whispers later revealed his unease. Family pressures, temptations from the outside. The vow's test had begun, fractures visible even here. Outside, as the sun climbed high, the convoy reformed. Sarah mounted a spare bike loaned by Lena, the leather seat molding to her like an old friend. The engine's roar vibrated through her bones, a symphony of resolve. They peeled out, dust trails marking their path toward confrontation. But in the distance, those pursuing lights grew closer, a harbinger of the ethical storm ahead, where loyalty would clash with doubt, and one woman's honor might forge or break the iron bond. The road whispered promises of trials yet to come, engines singing of unyielding kin. The asphalt blurred into a hypnotic ribbon under the relentless midday sun, the convoy's thunder a constant companion that drowned out the doubts whispering in Sarah's mind. She leaned into the curves on the loaned Harley, the wind whipping her hair free from its ponytail, carrying the sharp bite of creosote and sun-baked earth. Flanked by Lena on one side and Marcus on the other, she felt the weight of their presence like an invisible armor. Chosen kin, bound not by blood but by the iron threads of Ethan's vow. Jax led the pack, his silhouette cutting a steady path northward, toward the town hall where the suits would hold their meeting. The safe house's plans echoed in her thoughts. Arrive under cover of gathering dusk, present a united front, expose the corruption without raising fists. But the distant lights in her mirrors gnawed at her, flickering like false stars on the horizon. Pursuit? Or just a trick of the heat waves? As the miles stretched, the landscape shifted from barren flats to rolling hills dotted with scrub oak, the air growing thicker with the promise of impending rain. Jax signaled a slowdown, the engines harmonizing into a low growl as they veered onto a secondary road, narrower and pitted with forgotten potholes. Sarah's bike jostled, the vibration jarring her back to the present. Ahead, a makeshift barricade loomed, orange cones and a chain strung across the lane, manned by 2 figures in ill-fitting uniforms that screamed local authority more than genuine concern. They were badges on the take, Elias had warned, plants from the developer's payroll testing the vow's resolve. The convoy halted in a disciplined wave, dust clouds settling like veils over the chrome. Jax dismounted first, his boots kicking up gravel as he approached with hands visible, palms out, a gesture of peace in a world quick to draw lines. The officers stepped forward, one a wiry man with a mustache that curled like suspicion, the other broader, his stance heavy with borrowed power. "Roads closed for maintenance," the wiry one barked, clipboard in hand, eyes scanning the pack with poorly veiled disdain. "Turn around, no exceptions." Behind them, Sarah caught the glint of a radio, and farther back, a black SUV idled in the shadows of the oaks. The source of those pursuing lights, no doubt. Jax's voice cut through the tension, steady as a heartbeat. "We're just passing through, officer, heading to town for a public meeting. No trouble here." The broader man snorted, glancing at Sarah's position in the line. "That includes her. Heard about the diner scene? You bikers stirring up noise again? Clubs on thin ice? Incidents like Tommy's don't help." The name hung in the air like smoke, stirring murmurs from the riders. Tommy's roughing up, signs of aggression that left him withdrawn, sidelined in a roadside motel. His loyalty questioned by whispers from within. Sarah's grip tightened on the handlebars, the leather warm under her palms. She dismounted slowly, stepping forward beside Jax, her voice emerging firmer than she felt. "Tommy's one of yours. If there's truth to the vow, it's in standing by him, not bending to rumors." The wiry officer's eyes narrowed, flicking to her with recognition. "You, Jenkins, the road sister they dragged into this? Stay out of it. This club's relics, pushing against progress. That land's going to good use, jobs, not outlaw tales." Lena edged closer, her presence a quiet storm, while Marcus scanned the tree line, hand resting near his belt, not threatening but ready. The circle of bikers tightened subtly, a wall of leather and resolve that made the officers shift uncomfortably. Jax pulled the crumpled letter from his vest again, holding it out like evidence. "This ain't about land or relics, it's about honor. Ethan's words bind us. Protect the kin, uphold the code against those who twist it for gain. You know the suit's game. Fabricate stories, lean on the vulnerable. Tommy saw too much. Spoke against the bribes, we're riding to set it straight at the hall, peaceful-like." The broader officer hesitated, radio crackling with static that suggested backup on the way. Rain began to patter, light at first, then building to a steady drum on the leaves overhead, turning the road slick and the air electric with ozone. Sarah felt the moral crossroads sharpen, push back with words, or let the vow fracture here. "I've carried my brother's promise alone for years," she said, meeting their gazes. "It wasn't fairy tales, it was loyalty when the world turned cold. If you're blocking justice, you're part of the corrosion." The words landed like stones in still water, rippling through the standoff. The wiry man lowered his clipboard, a flicker of doubt crossing his face, perhaps a remnant of his own code buried under paychecks. After a tense beat, the chain rattled free, cones kicked aside with muttered curses. "Move along!" the broader one grumbled, stepping back as the SUV's engine revved in retreat. The convoy surged forward, tires hissing on wet pavement, the rain now a cleansing veil that washed the confrontation's grit from the air. Sarah remounted, heart pounding with the thrill of unbowed integrity, but the encounter lingered like a warning. As they crested the next hill, the town came into view, sprawling low against the valley, its hall a squat brick building lit by sodium lamps against the gathering storm. Jax glanced back, his nod a silent affirmation. The test had passed, but more loomed. They arrived as twilight deepened, the pack dispersing into shadowed lots to avoid drawing eyes too soon. Inside the safe house annex, a nondescript garage on the town's edge, Elias and the council waited, maps and ledgers spread under bare bulbs. Dylan, the young rider, paced near the door, his unease palpable, fingers drumming a nervous rhythm on his thigh. "They're everywhere," he muttered as Sarah entered, shaking rain from her jacket. "Suit's got informants. Tommy's talking loose. Says the developers offered him a cut to flip." Elias's face hardened, the silver in his hair catching the light like frost. "Doubt's the real enemy, boy. The vow endures because we face it head on." Sarah sat, the circle closing around her as stories unfolded. Tommy's sidelining not just aggression, but a planted seed of division, aimed at splintering the club before the meeting. Plans refined under the hum of fluorescent lights, Sarah would speak, her voice as Ethan's kin carrying weight, testifying to the vow's moral core against the suit's greed. Lena sketched signals on a napkin. Hand raised for hold, rev for advance. But as midnight neared, a knock echoed, sharp, insistent. Jax opened the door to reveal Tommy himself, bandaged and hollow-eyed, rain dripping from his hood. "I couldn't stay away," he rasped, stepping in. "They roughed me, yeah, signs of their fear, but the vow, it's all we got." Relief washed through the room, hugs exchanged like mended chains. But Sarah caught Dylan's sidelong glance, a shadow of temptation still flickering. Outside, the storm broke fully, thunder rolling like distant engines. The group bunked down in shifts, vigilance high, the air thick with the scent of damp leather and brewing resolve. Sarah lay on a cot, the letter clutched close, dreaming of desert promises under blood moons. Dawn would bring the haul, the confrontation, a poetic stand where truth might redeem the fractured or test the iron to breaking. The road's whisper grew louder, urging her forward into the heart of loyalty's fire. Dawn crept in like a reluctant witness, grey light filtering through the grimy windows of the garage annex, chasing away the storm's remnants. The air hung heavy with the scent of cooling rain, and stale coffee brewed on a hot plate, mingling with the faint metallic tang of oiled chains and leather. Sarah stirred on her cot, the borrowed blanket rough against her skin, Ethan's letter a folded weight under her pillow. Around her the iron vow stirred to life, low murmurs and the creak of joints as riders shook off the night's vigil. Tommy sat hunched in a corner chair, his bandages stark white against the dimness, nursing a mug that steamed faintly. His arrival had mended a fracture, but the room pulsed with unspoken tensions, like fault lines waiting to shift. Dylan lingered near the door, his young face drawn, eyes flicking to the shadows outside as if expecting ghosts. Jax moved among them, a steady anchor, distributing maps and assigning roles with clipped efficiency. "We roll in quiet, park the bikes a block out, walk in as citizens, not a club. Sarah, you lead the speaking. Your words carry Ethan's echo. They'll hit harder than any rev." She nodded, rising to splash water on her face from a dented sink, the cold shock grounding her. The mirror above it was cracked, reflecting her resolve in fractured pieces. A woman reborn from humiliation's ashes, now road sister in truth. Lena handed her a fresh kuta, lightweight and patched with the vow's emblem, the leather cool and supple. "Wear it proud," Lena said, her voice a low rumble. "It's not just cloth, it's the promise we all keep." Slipping it on, Sarah felt the weight settle like a mantle, the crossroads emblem pressing against her back. A reminder that family chose you and you chose back. Outside, the town stirred under a sky scrubbed clean by the storm, puddles mirroring the low-hanging clouds. The convoy formed in the alley's gloom, engines started with muffled growls to avoid drawing eyes. 50 riders, a force tempered by purpose, not fury. Sarah mounted her bike again, the familiar vibration thrumming through her as they pulled onto the main drag. The route wound through quiet streets lined with faded storefronts and picket fences, the air crisp with wet earth and blooming jasmine from hidden yards. Marcus rode close, his scarred jaw set, while Tommy, patched but unbowed, took rear guard with a few trusted others. Jax led, his silhouette etched against the rising light. But Sarah caught Dylan's hesitation in the lineup, his bike lagging, throttle hesitant, as if the pull of doubt anchored him. The town hall squatted at the square's heart, a brick edifice with flags drooping in the damp breeze, its steps worn smooth by generations of debates. Already a crowd milled, locals in flannel and jeans, developers in crisp suits, flashing smiles like polished chrome, and a smattering of badges hovering at the edges. The meeting was billed as public input on the land rezoning, but whispers carried the suit's agenda. Paint the iron vow as outdated threats, justify seizing the clubhouse grounds for their resort mirage. As the bikers dismounted in the lot, blending into the throng with purposeful strides, Sarah felt the eyes turn, curious, wary, some hardening with prejudice. Elias joined them at the doors, his silver hair gleaming, clapping Jax on the shoulder. Truth over thunder, brothers. The vow speaks loudest in silence. Inside, the chamber buzzed with fluorescent hum and the shuffle of folding chairs, the scent of polished wood and fresh ink from agendas. They claimed seats in the middle rows, a sea of leather amid the plaid, drawing stares but holding formation. The mayor, a slick man with a tie too tight for his neck, called order, his gavel sharp as a warning. Developers took the podium first, slides projecting visions of luxury, gleaming pools and golf greens on what was once sacred vow ground, scarred by campfires and midnight oaths. "Progress demands we leave relics behind," one suit intoned, his voice oily, glancing at the bikers with feigned concern. This club, incidents like the recent aggression on members, it's a liability. For the town's safety, we rezone. Murmurs rippled, and Sarah's pulse quickened, the air thickening with the moral fog of half-truths. Tommy shifted beside her, his bandaged hand clenching, but Jax's steady gaze held him. When open forum came, Elias rose first, voice booming yet measured. "This ain't about progress, it's about corruption eaten at the roots. That land holds promises, vows to protect kin, stand for what's right. You've leaned on our own, planted doubts with bribes and shadows." The suits bristled, one retorting with fabricated tales of vow disruptions, twisting Tommy's incident into proof of chaos. Doubt flickered in the crowd, faces turning skeptical. Then Sarah stood, the room's attention snapping to her like spotlights. The Kuta felt alive on her shoulders, Ethan's letter burning in her pocket. "I'm Sarah Jenkins, sister to Ethan Jenkins, one of the Vow's founders, lost to a roadside shadow years ago. He promised we'd protect each other, not for glory, but honor. I've carried that alone, scraping by, until last night when these riders, my chosen family, showed up at my darkest hour. Called me road sister, not because of blood, but because promises endure." Her voice, steady and raw, cut through the chamber, painting the diner's humiliation in broad strokes, the convoy's arrival as poetic justice. "You speak of incidents. Try signs of aggression meant to silence truth. Tommy didn't fold. He rode back to us. This club's no relic. It's the spine against your greed. Rezone if you must, but know the vow rides for justice, not against it." The words landed like rain on parched ground, nods blooming in the crowd, the suits' faces paling under the scrutiny. A local woman stood in support, then another, a veteran echoing the vow's quiet sacrifices. But as applause swelled, Dylan's chair scraped. He slipped out a side door, unnoticed by most, his departure a silent fracture. Jax caught it, eyes narrowing, but the moment held. The council adjourning with murmurs of reconsideration, the developers retreating with clipped retreats. Outside, as the group gathered under the hall's eaves, rain threatening again, Tommy clasped Sarah's arm. "You spoke for all of us, sister. Ethan's proud." Yet victory tasted tentative, the air electric with unresolved currents. Dylan reappeared from the shadows, face ashen, mumbling about a family call that pulled him away briefly. Whispers questioned his loyalty, the suit's tendrils perhaps longer than thought. Jax pulled Sarah aside, the square's fountain bubbling softly behind them. "That was the heart of it. Your stand mended more than land." But Dylan's wavering. "We ride back careful, eyes open, the vows tested but unbent." As the pack mounted up, engines humming to life under the gathering clouds, Sarah felt the road's pull deepen. Redemption wasn't a single clash. It was the daily choice to honor the fallen, weave the chosen family tighter against the storm. But in the mirrors, a lone bike trailed, Dylan's or a shadow from the suits. The ethical thunder rolled closer, promising trials where one slip could shatter the iron. If this tale of unbreakable bonds is stirring something in you, hit that like button below. It helps spread these stories of loyalty and redemption to those who need them most. The engines faded into a low growl as the convoy snaked back toward the safe house, the post-storm air thick with the earthy musk of wet sage and cooling asphalt. Sarah rode in the middle of the pack now, her borrowed Harley humming beneath her like a living pulse, the cooter's leather warmed by the midday sun breaking through scattered clouds. Flanked by Lena's steady presence and Marcus's watchful eye, she scanned the mirrors, the trailing bike, Dylan's silhouette, unmistakable in its hesitation, lingering just far enough to stir unease. The town hall victory lingered like a fragile ember. Nods from locals, the suit's retreat under the weight of exposed truths, Sarah's words weaving Ethan's vow into a shield against their greed. But redemption's path was never straight. It twisted with the shadows of doubt, and Dylan's wavering gaze back at the hall had planted seeds of fracture in the iron bond. Jax signaled a tight formation as they crested the hills, the landscape unfolding in waves of golden scrub and distant mesas that stood like silent sentinels. The wind carried the faint salt of an approaching front, whipping Sarah's hair and tugging at the emblem on her back. Crossed roads, eternal promise. Her mind replayed the chamber's tension, the mayor's gavel, the developer's oily slides, the ripple of support when she'd spoken of chosen kin, rising from humiliation's dust. Tommy's return had sealed it, his bandaged form a testament to endurance. But Dylan's slip out the side door. A whisper from the suits, perhaps, or the pull of personal chains too heavy for young resolve. Elias rode ahead with Jax, their bikes in sync, discussing low over the roar, contingencies for the land vote next week, ways to rally more locals without drawing Badge's ire. Sarah caught fragments. Keep the circle tight, doubts the blade that cuts deepest. They pulled into the safe house as the sun dipped toward afternoon, dust devils dancing in the yard like restless spirits. The adobe walls welcomed them with their cool embrace, the tin roof pinging softly from residual raindrops. Inside, the council gathered around the scarred table, maps refolded and coffee mugs refilled, the air laced with the bitter brew and the faint oil from cleaned chains. Elias took the head, his silver hair catching the light slanting through cracked blinds, voice rumbling like gravel under tires. The hall was a stand, but the road's long. Suits'll push back, rumors, delays, maybe more shadows like Tommy's night. Tommy nodded from his chair, flexing bandaged fingers. The signs of aggression faded, but the lesson etched deep. They aimed to break me, plant fear. But the vow held. Sarah's truth turned the tide. She sat across from Dylan, who avoided her eyes, fiddling with a loose thread on his cooter. The young rider's face was pale, stubble shadowing a jaw clenched too tight, his bike parked askew outside, like his loyalties. Lena leaned against the wall, arms crossed, her tattoos a map of old battles, watching him with the patience of a hawk. "Speak it, kid," she said finally, voice cutting the hum of planning. "We rode as one today. What's eating you?" The room stilled. Breaths held like engines on idle, the moral weight pressing in. Dylan shifted, glancing at the door as if escape beckoned, then met Sarah's gaze, raw, conflicted. "It's my sister," he muttered, words tumbling like loose gravel. "Back in the city, sick like your mum was, Sarah. Bills piling and those suits." They reached out after the haul, offered help, quiet money, no strings. Said the club's dragging us down, relics in a new world. I slipped out to take the call. Didn't sell, but it pulled. Murmurs rose, not anger but understanding laced with caution. The vow's code valued honesty over perfection, redemption over exile. Jax placed a scarred hand on Dylan's shoulder, the gesture firm yet forgiving. "Temptation's the desert wind. Tests us all. Ethan's vow wasn't blind, it was choice every mile. You rode back. That's the iron in you. Sarah felt the echo of her own fractures. Years alone after the ambush, burying grief in diner grease, doubting the Brotherhood's endurance. She leaned forward, voice soft but steady. I know that pull. Humiliation at the counter, thinking no one's coming, but they did. 50 strong calling me sister. Family ain't blood or ease, it's standing when the storm hits. Help us weave you back in. Dylan's shoulders eased fractionally, a nod breaking through, but the shadow lingered, a reminder that loyalty's forge burned hot. As plans sharpened, scouts to monitor the suit's moves, a quiet ride to rally veteran allies in nearby towns, the air grew charged with purpose. Outside, the sun cast long shadows across the yard, turning the bikes into gleaming guardians. Marcus tinkered with a loose chain, the metallic clink a rhythmic underscore to the torque, while Lena sketched perimeter watches on a napkin. Elias folded his arms, eyes on Sarah. You're the thread now, road sister. Ethan's blood spoke today. It'll bind us for the vote. But if the suits strike dirty, more incidents, twisted tales, we ride unified, truth our weapon. She nodded. The cooter's weight a comfort, memories of the convoy's thunder at the diner flooding back. Headlights slicing night, chants of road sister erasing Carl's venom. This was the poetry of justice, not fists, but unyielding honor against corruption's creep. Twilight fell as they bunked down, the safe house alive, with low conversations and the crackle of a small fire in a pit out back, flames dancing like shared secrets. Sarah stepped into the cooling night, the air crisp with pine from distant hills, stars pricking the velvet sky. Dylan joined her, offering a thermos of coffee, steam curling like unspoken apologies. I won't fold, he said, voice gaining steel. For Ethan, for you. The vow's my anchor. Relief bloomed, tentative, as Jax called from the door. Scouts reporting movement, black SUVs circling the town edges, suits consolidating. The ethical storm brewed, psychological fractures mending under pressure, but the larger threat loomed. Sarah sipped the bitter brew, gazing at the horizon where thunderheads gathered anew. Redemption demanded vigilance, one waver, and the iron could bend. The night deepened, watches rotating under the moon's pale watch, engines silent but souls revving with resolve. Whispers of the coming vote echoed. A public hearing where land and legacy hung in balance, suits poised to fabricate more incidents to sway hearts. Tommy shared stories by the fire, his voice weaving tales of Ethan's rides, midnight oaths under blood moons, promises that outlasted sandstorms and losses. Sarah listened, the flame's warmth mirroring the growing bond, chosen family coiling tighter. But as embers died, a distant rumble stirred, not thunder but engines, faint and purposeful, approaching from the south. Jax's radio crackled, eyes on tails, suits sending a message. The pack stirred, cooters donned, the air electric with the scent of rain and readiness. Sarah mounted her bike, heart steady in the face of the gathering dark. The vow's fire unquenched, trials forging them stronger. The road ahead whispered of climactic stands, where loyalty's true measure would shine or shatter under the weight of shadowed pursuits. The rumble grew from a whisper to a growl, slicing through the night's hush like a blade on whetstone. Sarah's bike idled beneath her, the engine's vibration syncing with the quickened beat of her heart as the iron vow pack formed ranks in the safe-house yard. Moonlight silvered the chrome accents on their Harleys, casting long shadows that danced with the flicker of dying embers from the fire pit. The air thickened with the metallic bite of impending rain and the faint, acrid whiff of exhaust from the approaching vehicles. 3 black SUVs, their headlights piercing the dark like accusatory eyes, flanked by a pair of squad cars with lights flashing silently, a show of force without the wail. Jax's radio hissed again, his voice calm over the static. Hold steady, no advances. We're light and truth tonight. The suits had escalated, sending this midnight delegation to rattle them before the vote, perhaps to stage another incident and paint the vow as the aggressors. Elias emerged from the adobe doorway, his massive frame silhouetted against the warm glow within, kuta zipped tight over his broad chest. "They want fear," he rumbled, eyes scanning the horizon where the vehicles crested the rise, gravel crunching under their tires. But the vows forged in storms like this. Tommy stood beside him, bandages peeking from his sleeve, his stance unyielding despite the shadows of his own ordeal, signs of aggression that had tested his silence but not his core. Dylan, redeemed in the firelight confessions, gripped his handlebars white-knuckled, the earlier temptation now a scar that bound him closer. Lena moved to Sarah's side, her bike a low purr, voice a murmur against the wind. "Road, sister. Your words at the hall lit the path. Let 'em see the fire now." Sarah nodded, the leather of her borrowed kuta creaking softly, Ethan's letter a talisman in her pocket, its faded ink a reminder that promises outlasted pursuits. The SUVs halted at the yard's edge, doors swinging open to disgorge a phalanx of suits, crisp shirts rumpled by the late hour, flanked by badges whose badges gleamed falsely under the moon. At their lead was Harlan Voss, the chief developer, a lean man with a smile like polished steel, his tie loosened as if the night were just another boardroom. "Evening, folks," he called, voice oily and amplified by the quiet, stepping forward with hands raised in mock peace. "No need for the engines. We're here to talk sense before tomorrow's vote. This club's charming, but relics don't build futures. We've got offers, fair ones. Sign over the land and everyone walks away whole. No more." Rough patches. His eyes flicked to Tommy, the implication hanging like smoke. The planted aggression, the bribes whispered to the wavering like Dylan. The badges shifted, hands near holsters, the air electric with the threat of escalation. Jax dismounted first, boots hitting the packed earth with deliberate slowness, his salt and pepper beard catching the moonlight as he faced Voss. The pack followed suit in a ripple, forming a loose semicircle that enclosed the yard without crowding. Leather walls etched with patches of crossed roads and eternal bonds. "Talk's cheap, Voss," Jack said, gravel in his tone matching the ground. "We rode through your barricades, spoke truth at the hall. Ethan's vow ain't for sale. It's for kin, for standin' when suits like you twist the wheel." Murmurs from the vow underscored him, low and unified, the scent of rain now mingling with the tension, fat drops pattering on the tin roof like impatient fingers. Sarah stepped up beside Jax, her presence drawing Voss's gaze. The road sister, risen from the diner's dust, now the emblem of their unbowed honor. "You!" Voss sneered, pointing a manicured finger, his facade cracking under the collective stare. "The waitress with the sob story. Think your brother's ghost scares us? We've got the town board, the votes lined up. One more push and this club's buried. Incidents fabricated, loyalties bought." He glanced at Dylan, a subtle prod, but the young rider met it with steel, shaking his head almost imperceptibly. The badges tensed as thunder grumbled overhead, the storm's herald, but Elias's voice boomed next, steady as an anchor. "Fabrications, like the shadows you cast on Tommy here. We know your game, corruption creeping in, testing the weak, but the vow's iron. Sarah's truth exposed you at the hall. Locals saw through the grease. Ride away, Voss. Tomorrow we stand for justice, not your mirage." The words hung, poetic and unyielding, the rain intensifying to a steady drum that slicked the ground and blurred the headlights. Voss's smile faltered, the badges exchanging uneasy glances as the crowd of riders, 50 strong, faces lit by the moon's glow, held their ground without a fist raised. No violence, just the quiet power of integrity, the chosen family's circle unbroken. Dylan spoke then, voice cracking but clear. "I felt the pull, sister sick, Bill's crushin', but this—" He gestured to the pack, to Sarah. "This is family. The vow held me. Yours won't break us." The admission rippled, Voss paling as the moral tide turned, his delegation murmuring retreat. One badge muttered into his radio, but the signal faltered in the downpour. Isolation, settling like the wet earth. Voss backed toward his SUV, rain streaking his face like defeated tears. "This isn't over. The vote—" Jax cut him off with a nod toward the road. "It is, if you let truth win. Go." Engines revved in the vehicles, tires spinning mud as they peeled away, taillights fading into the storm like retreating phantoms. The vow exhaled as one. The yard a sanctuary reclaimed, the air alive with ozone and relief. Sarah felt the weight lift not fully, shadows of doubt lingered, Dylan's temptation a scar on the bond, but the core held, forged stronger in the ethical fire. They gathered under the eaves as the rain sheeted down, arms clasped in silent oaths, Tommy's laugh breaking the hush with a tale of Ethan's defiance under similar skies. Dawn broke clear the next day, the vote unfolding in the town hall's sunlit chamber, like a coda to the night's thunder. Locals filled the seats, veterans and families nodding as Elias presented the vow's case. Land as legacy, not commodity, corruption exposed in Voss's hasty withdrawal. Sarah testified last, her voice weaving the diner's redemption into the broader tapestry. Humiliation turned to honor, a sister's promise calling forth 50 guardians. The board swayed, votes tipping toward preservation, the suit's empire crumbling under the weight of unmasked greed. As the gavel fell in their favor, applause swelled, the emblem of crossed roads gleaming on kutas like badges of quiet victory. The convoy rode out under a vast blue sky, the desert wind carrying the scent of sage and freedom, bikes thundering in formation toward horizons unbound. Sarah led a flank now, her sedan traded for the Harley's roar, Lena's shout of "Road, sister!" echoing over the engines. Jax glanced back, his nod a seal on the vow reborn, redemption not in conquest, but in the enduring choice of loyalty. Ethan's spirit rode with them, promises surviving the miles, family chosen in the face of storms. The road stretched endless, whispering of new calls, new kin to shield, the iron bond unbent, unbreakable. If this journey of honor and chosen family has touched your road, thank you for riding along. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We'll keep these tales of quiet courage rolling your way, one chapter at a time.